Welcome to Resilient Minds 365, where we discuss the resilient stories of entrepreneurs, professionals, and students with mental illnesses to encourage you to strive, thrive, and live in abundance. I'm your host, Cleoni Crawford. Hey y'all, welcome to Resilient Minds 365. I'm Cleoni Crawford, your host. Today we have a special guest with us. Today we have Bryn Bamber with us. Let's talk about Bryn. Bryn has lived for years as a sensitive perfectionist with anxiety coursing through her veins and through core energetics, and she began to find the root cause of why she was so anxious and take steps to drastically reduce her suffering. She works with deeply spiritual women to help them overcome imposter syndrome and make more money with the gifts through healing childhood habits, patterns, and trauma. Her story about the path to healing has been featured on the Tiny Buddha, Introvert Dear, and the CourageMakers and the Rare Birds podcast. With that said, I present to you Bryn Bamber. Hey, Bryn, how are you today?
I am doing well. Just got back from a little tiny walk around the neighborhood.
Wicked, awesome. It's a beautiful day outside. The sun is shining, can't complain. It's a little chilly.
It's a little chilly, but yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful day. Definitely. So, Bryn, tell us a bit more about your profession, what you do for a living.
So I'm a mental health professional trained in something called core energetics. And core energetics has a talk component, we'll say. So it's similar in some ways to talk therapy. As children, we have to choose attachment over authenticity. We have to maintain that connection to the grown-ups who raised us over our authentic expression at times. Not all of it, but parts of it, or sometimes a lot of it, depending on the household you grew up in. And so part of it is talking about that, seeing what those patterns and habits are, and seeing how they're impacting your life as an adult. I work specifically with adults. And then, because sometimes to have a fulfilling life, we have to choose authenticity over attachment as adults. So it's like when our neural pathways are forming and we're kids, we're having to do it one way. And then when we're adults, it's almost like you have to flip the script.
Right.
So we talk about those patterns and habits, but then there's also a physical body component to what I do. So an example of that is if you were 5 years old and you weren't allowed to be angry, you grew up in a household where anger wasn't welcome. The way that a child will stop that authentic expression of anger, if they know there's going to be some sort of negative consequence when it happens, when they they want to throw their arms in the air and tantrum, and they know there's going to be some sort of negative consequence, the way that the child stops that is literally tensing their shoulders, physically tensing the muscles to hold their arms down at their sides, holding their breath slightly, breathing shallow. And if you do that for years, or even some of us end up doing it for decades, you end up with chronic tension in the body. So folks who have suppressed anger have chronic tension in their shoulders, neck, jaw, hips. So core energetics, in addition to kind of talking about the stories of what happened and how that's impacting your life now, and do you want to make a change? And then we're also looking at how are those experiences impacting your body, and actually resolving them on a somatic, on a body level, so that when you you know, say going with the suppressed anger example, maybe you want to be more assertive at work. Maybe you want to assert your opinion when you disagree with your boss, but you have this pattern of suppressed anger. When it's still stored in your body, it can be very difficult to even get the words out in that meeting. But as we heal it on a body level, that, bringing your anger through your voice. We also work with the voice. It's an area where a lot of people will sometimes have blocks. You're able to actually make those changes in your life.
Cool. All right. Cool. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So with that said, we'll go right into the interview now that we know exactly what you do. So tell us more about your mental health diagnosis. We know you haven't really been diagnosed, but you know exactly what has gone on in your life. So tell us more about what it is that you have lived through, and when did you discover that?
Yeah, so I guess I'm self-diagnosed. We were talking a little bit in the pre-chat. I've never been to like a psychiatrist or someone who does diagnosis. But I think for sure anxiety disorder. That was a primary thing in my life, and I've been, I spent many years with very high anxiety, and I didn't even realize. I think part of the reason I don't have a diagnosis is I didn't realize that not everyone had that much anxiety. Everyone talks about stress and being stressed, and being in high school, and I was stressed in high school, and being in university, I was stressed in university, and then getting a job, and I was stressed at my job, and I was just like, I just am stressed. Everyone's stressed. I mean, now I know it's like we normalize. That's part of how we cope, is we normalize whatever our experience is. And so I definitely, I would have just been like, oh no, I'm fine. I'm just a little stressed like everybody else. But now, in a place where I have greatly reduced the amount of anxiety I feel, I'm like, oh, that was not a good
place
right?
Mm-hmm.
That I was in. So I would say that would be my self-diagnosis. The other one we talked about briefly in the pre-chat as well is childhood PTSD. So I, at age, I think I was around 29, I was actually doing my mental health training in core energetics. That's my official title, the core energetics practitioner. And we were studying trauma that happens very young, like in the first year of life, or even trauma that happens in the womb, or during childbirth. And I, in that class, I started to realize, and the rest of the class started to realize, and my teacher of the class started to realize, I had the symptoms. I had all the symptoms.
Wow.
And so I sort of became like the example.
The poster child.
In the class, they'd be like, oh, or, and I volunteered as well. But I started to notice I had all these symptoms, but I have no memory. And I still to this day have no memory of the trauma. And at that time, I was, it was very like, I mean, it was a very difficult thing to go through, to kind of say, okay, so maybe something happened when I was young, but I don't have any conscious memory. And again, like, suppressing memory is another mechanism that helps us cope, and is common when people have childhood trauma. Sometimes they don't have as many memories from childhood, which is one of my symptoms. And so I I started to open up to the possibility that something happened. And that was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Now I'm more at peace with it.
Okay.
I believe something happened. I have the symptoms. My nervous system knows. I still have no conscious memory. And I've also learned that you don't need to have conscious memory to heal. Because core energetics works with the body, works with the nervous system, we can heal these experiences on a body level without intellectually understanding exactly what happened.
Okay.
So that, yeah, I would say those are my self diagnoses.
Okay. So anxiety and child PTSD.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So maybe you can tell us more about your mental health story of resilience. What did you go through? How did you cope? And how did you rise from it?
Yeah. So we were also talking at the beginning of the call. I've always had very strong coping skills. I was a good student. I got mostly A's. That part of my life, I worked very hard, and I was, I think, driven by my anxiety to do well, which worked. And in some ways, I'm grateful for it. And, when I look back now, it was a very painful way to live, to be driven by anxiety.
Right.
And I started to, in university, I started to learn more about the world and the state of the world, kind of zoomed out of my little life. And I started to learn about, oppression and all different kinds of things. And I started to learn about like privilege and everything too. And so for a while, I also had this belief of like, oh, well, I'm privileged. I grew up in the first world and I'm white, and I have all these things on my side, and my parents are at that time were together. And so, but I started to kind of use that against me and be like, well, I don't deserve help. I don't need help. I just need to like make the world a better place and not get help for myself. And so for me, the real turning point where I actually started to get more help for myself was when I was in my first job, and I was working for a nonprofit, and I was doing work that I felt was important and was meaningful, but I wasn't really taking care of myself. I was taking work home on the weekends, and I was I made some mistakes, and now I know I made those mistakes because I'm a human being. But at that time, I wasn't able to forgive myself for some of the mistakes I made.
Yes.
And so I ended up burning out. So it's like I graduated from university, I got this job, I basically got my dream job, and I lasted a year and I burnt out.
Wow.
And so that was my first like wake up call that I needed help. That the way I had been living wasn't sustainable. And so what I decided to do, I quit. I didn't really know, it just didn't feel sustainable to stay at the job. I quit. And I ended up deciding to move to an ashram, like a spiritual community based on the teachings of yoga. And I ended up moving there and staying there for 2 years, studying yoga, studying meditation. I did a bunch of different things when I was there. I did internships in all different ways. I took courses, and that was the beginning of my healing journey, was getting introduced to yoga, getting used to introduced to meditation. I remember, so we did yoga every morning at 7 a.m. That was like part of the schedule, and you had to go, you know, you were like, you weren't supposed to skip. And I remember when I started Shavasana, that pose at the end where you lie on your back, my anxiety was so intense that I hated it. I hated to just lie on my back and do nothing. Like it was pain because if I was busy, you know, my coping was like to be busy or to be working. I didn't feel my anxiety as much if I was like doing, and that just lying on my back, I would just feel it. I would just feel the pain of being highly anxious. And one of the gifts doing yoga every day for 2 years, doing Shavasana every day for 2 years, is by the end of my time there, I could enjoy. I was able to relax in Shavasana. I was able to actually lie on my back. And for the most part, maybe not every time, maybe once in a while I would still have anxiety, but for the most part, I didn't hate, like when I moved there, I hated Shavasana. Like, I hate this pose. And then by the end, I had done enough healing that I could enjoy it.
That's good. That's good. I mean, it's really important to figure out what it is that works for you, you know, in order to facilitate your healing and, you know, to rise back, I guess, from the, I guess, what do you call it? The ashes.
Call it the ashes. Yeah.
You call it from that. So what did you have? So we understand you went to, was it Ashram?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a country? Where is that?
So I went to Yoshoda Ashram, so ashrams are like spiritual communities. So there are many, many in India, and that's where they come from. But the ashram I went to is actually in Canada. It's in British Columbia, and it's called Yoshoda Ashram. And the woman who founded it studied with a guru in India at an ashram in India, and he said to her, after she had studied with him for a while, he said, go back to Canada and start an ashram, found your own. So I believe it's the oldest ashram in Canada, or and maybe in North America. It's been around for over 50 years, and is in the Kootenay Mountains of British Columbia. Super beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. British Columbia is a beautiful place. Really great place to kind of relax and kind of heal.
Totally.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So we understand you went to the ashram. So the next question I was going to ask is, what did you have to do to overcome or bounce back? But we understand that was one. Were there any other resources that you had to use to bounce forward from your from the anxiety and the, I guess, the PTSD and all the other stresses that were in your life?
Yeah, so I would say that was definitely my first, deep healing experience. And then my second deep healing experience was finding core energetics, which is the thing I eventually trained in and that I now do with my own clients. So, I had been living at the ashram, and I hadn't moved there and thought like, oh, I'm going to live here for 2 years. It didn't work like that. I went for a month. I did quit my job, so I knew I had the freedom to stay as long as I needed. But initially, I went for a month, and I had a good experience, and then I extended for 3 more months, and then I, step by step, and ended up being there for 2 years. But at a certain point, I had committed. I had been, one of the things I did there was I ran the vegetable garden. So I was doing this internship, and I had said, okay, I'll stay until the end of October, which is when the garden closes, when all the harvest is done, and we, put mulch on the beds, the garden beds, and then it's done. And so, I was coming up to my end date, and I was feeling into my intuition, which was one of another practice I learned at the ashram was to connect to my intuition about whether I wanted to extend. And I just was like, no, okay, I feel like this chapter is over for now. Maybe I'll go back at some point, but
for now, you're done.
I don't want to extend. And I had heard about this somatic psychotherapy, this dance psychotherapy program in at Naroba University, which is a Buddhist university in Boulder, Colorado.
Wow.
And so at that point, I hadn't been working for 2 years. I'd been living at this ashram. But I had found this program, I met someone who went to Naropa University, and then I looked at it online and I found this dance psychotherapy program. And I'm a dancer. I love dance. And I had also at the ashram started to study like kind of pop psychology and learn more about the mind. And so I thought, oh my goodness, this is like the perfect school program for me. But I didn't have any money because I had been living at an ashram.
Yeah, definitely.
For 2 years. So I just was like, okay, I need to get a job. Like next step, if I'm going to leave, I need to get a job. I wanted to do this program. I wanted to study, but it was in the US too. So it was, US dollars, US tuition, which is higher than here in Canada. And so I ended up getting rehired at the same nonprofit that I worked for before, but I got hired at their Toronto office, which is how I ended up here in Toronto. And my idea was like, I'm going to go, I'm going to work, I'm going to save money, and then I'm going to do this master's program in dance psychotherapy. And so I moved here, I've never lived in Toronto before, and started working and started, saving what I could so that I'd be able to afford this master's degree, which was going to be like, it's 3 years. Each year is like 25,000 US. So it was like 75K. So it was like a lot of money.
Wow, that's expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, here, I'm working, I'm saving money. And, I was starting to make friends in Toronto, and I do something called Contact Improv Dance. So I was very involved in that community because I love that kind of dance and making friends. And I became friends with this woman from my dance community, and she was studying core energetics. So she had been exposed to it, she had done it herself, and now she was studying it. And so she would like tell me about it, and we would go, we would dance, and then we'd go for coffee after, and she'd talk about it. And I was like, okay, cool. But I wasn't super interested. But then she did like a free Friday night. She and I think actually her husband actually ran this free Friday night where you could go and just try it out. And I remember walking into the room, this location I'd never been to before, and just feeling at home, just in the energy of the room. I was just like, oh, I feel good here. And then it was this 2.5-hour experience, and I had a really good experience.
Yeah, I would assume so. Wow.
Yeah, in learning about myself and having some insights and getting support from some of the people who were there. I knew a couple people who were there, and it was this really positive experience. And so I was like, okay, I like this. So then, she put on like a weekend, like a 2-day full day thing. And so I did that, and I had a good experience there. And then I joined a weekly group. And so I started doing it, and I started feeling the healing impacts of, doing this body based kind of healing modality. And so then I decided to sign up for the training program. I decided to switch. I just switched. I thought I was going to go to this Buddhist university and do dance psychotherapy. And then I was like, no, I found this thing and it worked. Like I'm feeling the impacts on me. And it was similar enough, you know, it's involving the body, it's involving also as well, like looking at the story of what happened to you as a child. And it just felt like I was like, okay, the dance psychotherapy sounds amazing on paper, but I've never actually done it. I've done this. I know it works for me. So I just switched.
Okay.
And then, so really, core energetics and doing this, you know, it's a 4-year part-time training program, and you have to do so many hours of your own personal, like with your own personal core energetics practitioner. And that was deep. So it's an intensive process. So that was deeply healing. And then that's when I had that experience I was telling you about earlier, where I started to realize, oh, I have some sort of childhood trauma. It's suppressed. And just starting to be aware of that started to let me to heal it through my body. And so that was kind of step one, was like the ashram, yoga, meditation, you know, all of that. And then step two for me was really this core energetics, looking a little bit more clearly about what happened in my childhood with the memories that I do have. And yeah, and also doing some healing on a physical body level.
Okay. Wow. So my next question for you is, what are 3 things you wish you had available when you were at your lowest point?
Yeah. Okay. I don't remember what I wrote in the form, so I'm just gonna free form it. I hope that's okay.
That's totally fine with me.
Okay. What are 3 things I wish I had available at my lowest point? I mean, I think one of the things that has been the most healing for me, and that is hard, even now at times it's hard, is to be proud of myself.
Affirmation.
Yeah.
Self-affirmations. Yeah.
To be kind. I think for a long time I was very hard on myself, and I didn't take time to celebrate my achievements. I didn't go to my university graduation. You know, I didn't, it didn't feel like, it's like I could have gone, but it would have been inconvenient. So I was like, oh, whatever. I don't need to. I think I didn't even go to my high school graduation. So I wasn't very good at, like, you know, like high school's, can I swear on this podcast? No. Okay. High school is hard. I'll say it without a swear.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
High school is hard. And so you know, now I'm like, I'm proud of myself for getting through that.
Yes.
That was, you know, it's hard academically, but it's also hard just like socially. I think the hardest part for me was the social part, high school.
Definitely.
And it's like, you know, I wish I could have been proud of myself at those moments, and taken a moment to, yeah, just honor myself. So that's number 1. Number 2 is knowing that it's okay to have bad days.
Yes, that's very important.
That it's okay. I actually only realized this a few months ago, that I had some sort of thought in my head that people with like confident people, or like people with like high self-esteem, I thought those people never had bad days. I thought to be like confident and to have high self-esteem, like I should never feel bad.
Right.
And it's like, I think as far as I can tell, that's impossible. Even like all my role models, all the people who I look up to, they have bad days. They have moments when they don't feel well, or feel, you know, their emotions are not feeling good. And to just know that that's okay. Nothing has gone wrong. It just means you're human. You wake up and you have a heaviness in your heart. You're a human being.
Right.
Not that you're not broken, you're not, So I wish I could do that. I wish I had known that. And number 3, what would I have wanted to have at my lowest point? I guess I don't know if this like counts, but like what's coming to me is like I wish I had like friends that I felt comfortable talking to.
Yes, that's actually very
Honestly.
important. Yeah.
Which I think to a degree I did, and maybe to a degree I didn't, but I wish I had a community that really
Understood you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can understand that one, because I mean, that's actually one of the most important things. When you're at your lowest points, your support system is very important. You know what I mean? Like who you
Yeah.
surround yourself with, it's crucial, very
Yeah.
crucial, because those people can speak into your life. They can actually, or they can, when they speak into your life, they can speak positively or negatively. And that can cause you to spiral down, even get even worse. So it's very important to have the right circle around you, so that way you can actually move towards healing and to progress, so yeah. So my next question is, so what words of hope would you give to our listeners? What would you tell them if they had a mental health challenge, I guess?
Yeah, I think I would say some of the same things. I would say it's okay. You're not alone. Many of us suffer, and depend, it's like, obviously I don't know exactly who I'm talking to, but I imagine there's certain things I can relate to, struggling with. And actually one of the like the purposes of my life, or like I feel like my life's mission is to tell people who have trauma that they can do whatever the fuck they want.
I see.
Oh, I swore. I'm sorry.
That's all good. You did. It's all right. It's all good. You can do whatever you want. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, do whatever. People who have trauma can do whatever they want.
Right.
Whatever they want. And yes, we need support, and you might need healing, and you might need a shoulder to cry on, and we're not supposed to do it alone. You're not supposed to do it alone. And there are supports out there.
Right.
And you can do whatever you want, whatever your dream is.
Amazing.
That's you can really do it in a way that feels good to you
and honoring you.
And is honoring you. And I think, from my own experience with this, it's like, I think sometimes when you're, I have this concept I talk about that I call like trauma brain, like the part of my brain that was traumatized. It's like not my whole brain, but part of it, right? And my trauma brain thinks that like, maybe I can do whatever I want, but it's going to be really hard. And you can do whatever you want, and it can be easy.
It can be.
Like, not that it's easy, like, I don't mean that like it's like, oh, it's no problem, it's a walk in a park, and every day you feel like rainbows and daisies. Like, no. But I think the part of me that went through trauma thinks it has to be like back-breakingly hard. And that it can be much easier than that. I still have to show up, I still have to put myself out there, and I have hard days, but that it doesn't have to be backbreaking. It doesn't have to be, the way whatever your past experiences were. Right.
That makes sense. So with that said, we are going to switch up just a little bit. We are going to talk about my favorite topic, which is music therapy. And as you can see behind me, there's a book that's called The Music of My Life, which is where I talk about my journey with bipolar and music therapy and how it helped. So my question to you is, what type of music do you like?
So I like a bunch of different kinds of music. Sometimes when I'm in a like very chill, peaceful place, I like folk music, that kind of thing. And then recently when I'm like amped up, I like pop and like rock. And I recently have been listening to like a lot of 80s. I've been listening to this like 80s playlist on Spotify. Just
Yes,
like
love it.
gets me going. Yeah.
Okay, wicked. I'm an 80s baby, so I love the 80s. Love it, love it, love it. All right. So if you were to think of a song that described your journey, what would it be and why?
Yeah. So I'm glad you reminded me of this
Yes.
in
Yes.
our pre-chat because it's such a good song. So the song that I chose is Rise Up by Andra Day.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think the reason why is that yeah, it hasn't always been easy. And
Right.
and I have had, many days where it's been hard to keep going or, keep working towards the life that I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that message of rising up day after day for the life that I want, for the world that I want. To, yeah, there's something about, whatever pain or suffering or challenge, it's worth it to work towards the life that I want.
Cool. That's a good message. That's a good message. So, Bryn, how can we stay in touch with you? What are your social media handles?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram. I'm at Bryn_Bamber, which is BRYN_BAM as in mother, B as in Bob, ER. I'm on Facebook. I'm Bryn Bamber. You're welcome to add me as a friend there or like my, business page. On LinkedIn, I'm also Bryn Bamber, and I also have a free anxiety training for anyone else who anxiety is part of what they struggle with, which you can find at tinyurl.com/anxiety training. It's 10 minutes long, and it is a training to be done in the moment when you're feeling the anxiety. It's 10 minutes. And my experience with that and my clients' experience with it is that it doesn't always make that anxiety go away, but it reduces it. It gives you a little space. So you have room to breathe and also room to make the decision you need to make. Often when we're having anxiety, it's like there's something that happened and we have to decide what to do. And so that just gives you a little breathing space so you can face whatever's happening in your life.
Amazing, amazing. All right, well, thank you so very much, Bryn. It was such a pleasure just having you on our show. And and to all you resilient minds out there, until next time, please subscribe to us on all our platforms and don't forget to rate the show and leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Also, join the community of Resilient Minds and sign up for our monthly newsletter at CleoniCrawford.com. Be sure to grab a copy of my book, The Music of My Life, on all Amazon marketplaces and to get to know me better. And if you can think of one person that will receive value from today's show or connect with Brynn Bamber's testimonial, please share it with them. Feel free to take a screenshot of this week's episode of the podcast and tag us on Instagram. You can tag myself at Only Cleoni or Resilient Minds 365 on Instagram, and today's guest at Bryn_Bamber. And remember, mental health is not a death sentence. Despite your illness, you can strive, thrive, and live a life of abundance. Until next time, I'm Cleoni Crawford, and I'm signing off.